Are you ready?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, if I may have leave to call my next witness, who is Mr. Gavin Craythorne.
Your voice has gone down again. You'll have to raise your voice.
My apologies, Chair. I will do so.
Just repeat what you said so everybody knows what's next.
The next witness is Mr. Gavin Craythorne. Thank you.
Well, it's as if I asked you to lower your voice more. Come closer to the mic, I think, because it looks like your voice is naturally soft. Okay.
Chair, my next witness that I will be calling is Mr. Gavin Craythorne. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Please administer the oath of affirmation.
Okay, I'll stand up.
Please state your full names for the record.
Gavin John Craythorne.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes.
Do you swear that the evidence will give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing else but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
I do. So help me God.
Thank you. You may be seated, Mr. Craythorne. Yes, proceed, Ms. Beer.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Craythorne, firstly, thank you very much for availing yourself, and thank you for approaching the Commission when you discovered there were some things that were happening that should not be happening. It takes a brave person to do that, and we thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. It's an honor to be here today. I hope I did not disappoint you.
Good. Thank you for coming to give evidence, Mr. Craythorne.
My pleasure.
Mr. Craythorne, before we even qualify you and tell the chairperson who you are and what you do, just tell me very briefly what it was that made you come to the Commission.
I'm a founding member.
I'm sorry, Ms. Beer, don't you want to get the procedural matters out of the way, get
The
us to
affidavit
admit
admitted.
his affidavit first, then you
Yes.
can go into that.
Thank you, Chair. I will do so. Mr. Craythorne, in front of you, you should have a file that on the spine is written Mining Bundle 04A. Do you have that?
I do.
Okay. Please turn that bundle to just underneath the tab that says AFFI, AFFI. You there?
I'm there.
Okay, thank you. That's page 3,
That's correct.
if you look on the left. Okay. Do you confirm that this is an affidavit that you deposed to, that these are your names at the top and at the bottom that is your initial? One of those is your initials.
I do.
And if I take you to page 95 of that same document,
Yes.
is that your signature almost at the bottom?
That is my signature.
And
Well, let's clarify that there are two signatures there. The one above your name, is that your signature?
That is correct, Chairperson.
Yes, okay.
thank you. And the signature that is right at the bottom?
That signature is of Captain Donna van Wijngaard from Alexander Bay.
Do you confirm that when you signed this document, you signed it on the 17th of July 2020 as stated there and in front of the captain?
I do.
And when you were signing this document, did you swear the oath that this is the evidence, that this is your document and it is the truth?
I did.
Okay. Have you gone through this document recently?
I have.
Do you confirm now that the contents of this document are the truth?
To the best of my knowledge and to the best of my, it's true.
Okay. And do you confirm that in addition to this document, you submitted annexures that you refer to in this document?
Yes.
And that those annexures appear from page 96 of this bundle and carry on to the next bundle, bundle 4B. Do you confirm that those are documents that you submitted to the Commission together with your affidavit?
Yes, I confirm that.
Thank you. Chair, if I may, with your leave, ask that the affidavit of Mr. Gavin Craythorne that appears from page 3 to page 95 of bundle 4A and the annexures appearing from page 96 to the end of bundle 4B be accepted as exhibit XX4.
The affidavit of Mr. Gavin John Craythorne, starting at page 3 of mining bundle 04A, together with its annexures, will be admitted as exhibit XX4.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. You may then proceed.
Yes, Mr. Craythorne, I had asked you to tell us briefly what it was that made you come to the Commission.
Chairperson, I'm a founding member of an organization called the Equitable Access Campaign, and I'm also a veteran diamond diver with 35 years of experience in the industry. And the past 20 years I've been involved in diving diamonds and producing mining vessels for Alexkor. I came to Alexkor in late 1998 when Alexkor first decided to outsource its diver mining operations. And I went through the epic court case as a diamond contractor for Alexkor. I saw that in its entirety. I then went through the period when the deed of settlement was being finalized. It was as if everything had come to a standstill and no real development could take place in Alexander Bay until the court case had been finalized. So we were all looking forward with great expectations once the land claim had been concluded, and people who live in Alexander Bay and in the surrounding areas could get on with rebuilding Alexander Bay into a world-class marine mining center. That did not happen. You've begun to hear today about the decline and the governance dissipation that's occurred over the past few years. And as someone who's lived in Alexander Bay for 20 years and observed the steady and relentless decline in the standards of living, in the condition of the town, in the condition of the mine, and knowing what was driving it, and having already begun trying to raise awareness of these problems even before the Zondo Commission was constituted. When President Cyril Ramaphosa became president, that became the turning point in my difficult journey. And when your commission was began, I knew that there was a real chance to turn things around, and I must say I feel that today more than ever. And again, I thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Mr. Craythorne, you indicated that you are a member of EAC. What is EAC?
The Equitable Access Campaign is an organization that was founded in 2010 by a group of veteran diamond divers who had enough industry nous to realize that the dramatic decline in our weather patterns was not something that could be ignored, and that the revelations regarding climate change and so on were in fact heralding a very, very difficult period ahead for our industry, because our industry, which is focused on shallow water mining, depends heavily on the correct weather conditions. We work in the surf zone, and the surf zone is a very dynamic zone. And you can't work there when the swell is in excess of about 3 to 4 foot without either injuring yourself or just wasting your time underwater. So you need very, very specific calm weather conditions, which declined from 2000 at the turn of the millennium. We were averaging about between 140 and 160 sea days, to the worst year, I think, was in 2010. I think it was around about 13 sea days. So it's like your business being shut down for 90% of the time compared to the availability that you've had and that you've been used to in the past. And with the pressure that climate change was bringing, it became very clear to the veteran diamond divers that the extremely inequitable structure of our industry would not be able to be supported with the new reality of climate change. Our industry is the only industry that I know of where you have an entire industry that is operated and run by professional people doing the actual mining, but none of whom are actually owners of any mining right. They have access to the ocean to go and do what they love doing, but it is done entirely at the whim of concession holders. And that has always been a weapon that's been used against the small-scale miners to prevent any form of real industry consolidation and unification, and any possibility of collective bargaining. Because every time that we tried to organize ourselves, it would always be sabotaged by underhand tactics and divide and rule tactics. So the EAC actually was prompted by the new legislation, which was based, if you read the preamble to the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act, the entire act is based on the principle and notion of equitable access, which makes perfect sense to me, but it doesn't seem to make sense to the concession owners, who use their consolidated industry ownership to exercise brute force over contractors who, for the past 10 years, I've been basically in a state of servitude because of the conditions and the commercial terms that I'm forced to work under, and all of my fellow diving contractors are in the same situation. So with the arrival of the changes, the fundamental changes of a use it or lose it principle, we felt very confident that, well, this is now going to herald a sea change, if you'll excuse the pun, in our industry. So, you know, a group of veterans, myself and my good friend who's here today, who's been on this difficult journey with me, Mr. George Nicolai, he's been a diamond diver in Port Nolloth 5 years longer than I have. He's been diving diamonds for 40 years. And he's got even more community activity, or he's more of a community activist than I am. But it became clear to us that in order for us to get a better dispensation, a better relationship for our industry, we'd have to rely heavily on the new legislation, and that resulted in us in forming the Equitable Access campaign. We reached out to concession owners like De Beers, Transhex, and the other Northern Cape concession owner, Ms. Ina Visser. We said to them, listen, you guys are not doing anything with your concessions. Why don't you just, give them back to DMR and let the small-scale marine miners do application to get them. That didn't have much of an impact, so we then approached Parliament and we attended the hearings on the mining charter, and we gave evidence to that effect.
Mr. Beer, remember to lead the witness.
Yes, Chair,
Yes.
thank you very much.
Okay, so
He may have a lot to say,
Yes.
but you know the direction that that you want to take him
Yes, Chair.
through. Okay.
So it's difficult to say it all in a few words, Chairman, but
Yes.
I hope that has been sufficient.
No, that's fine. Ms. B, knows
Yes.
what's in your statement fully, and she will, through her questions, she will direct you on the important issues.
I'll focus on the
Okay, all
issue
right.
now.
Okay, all right. Ms. Beer?
Thank you. Mr. Craythorne, so in a nutshell, you are representing Equitable Access Campaign, which is a group of other miners
That is correct.
that you are with that have been doing this work with you.
Correct.
Okay. Can you tell us about your qualifications and your experience? And from there, I need you to also explain how you started your engagements with Alexkor. Briefly.
I matriculated in 1980. I went to the Navy. I did my diver training in the Navy to what they refer to as a clearance diver 2. After leaving the Navy, I worked under the late Dr. John Gurney, who had a small operation in Doring Bay.
Mr. Craythorne, how long have you been diving?
I've been diving diamonds since 1985. So I've got 35 odd years of diamond diving experience, 20 of which have been as a contractor for Alexkor.
Okay, thank you. What else do you do other than actually dive? What else do you do that's related to diving?
I've always been fascinated by the possibilities that mechanizing diver mining might have for the inshore as opposed to the offshore mining. So I've been designing and building diamond mining systems, starting off with very, very small, cheap and nasty ski boats to much more advanced 50-foot vessels today. I've built 40% of the diamond mining vessels that have ever worked in the industry have been built by me.
And how were you introduced to Alexkor?
I was approached by the then production manager of the marine operations, Mr. Tino Swart, to build a 26-foot Butcat mining vessel for Alexkor, which I did. I believe it was in 1993. And as it was flowing out of that, I became interested in the affairs of Alexkor and the possibilities, because Alexkor does sit with the most exciting diamond licenses that I know of anywhere in the world.
Do you still design and manufacture mining vessels?
The last vessel that I built was for the late Dr. John Gurney and his son, James Gurney. They had approached me in 2013 already to buy a share in my business to build a vessel to bring into operation Alexkor's operations, but we never made headway. So I built it for them and they took it to Transex at the Punt, and that was the last vessel. That was 2013, I believe, that the last time I built a mining vessel.
Okay, Mr. Craythorne, if I can take you to page 119 of the same bundle. You'll see that we are already in the middle of a document when we get to page 119. So if we can first go, or keep your place in page 119, and then just turn back to page 106. You confirm this is your CV?
That is correct.
Okay, and that the page on page 119 is part of your CV?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, if you look at that page 119, and you look at the second vessel that's being mentioned there, I see the name Alexkor Limited. What does that mean?
This is a schedule of all of the turnkey mining vessels that I've built over the years, and that is the DMV, which is the acronym for Diamond Mining Vessel, Sea Delver 7, which was a 25-foot buttcat mining conversion that I built under contract to Alexkor, and I see it was 1993.
Do you still produce, how long after this did you continue producing vessels for Alexkor?
Well, it was at this time that Alexkor started becoming more focused on political matters. And it had been the intention to develop a fleet of these vessels because they're very cost effective in comparison to the vessels that Alexkor had been building for itself over many years. Large steel vessels are not very cost effective for working in very shallow water, whereas small agile catamarans are much more effective, much more cost effective.
Okay. Am I correct if I take you 2 pages before page 119? Turn again to page 116.
Yes.
Am I correct that from page 116 up to page 130?
Yes.
Those are vessels that you built or had a hand in?
That is correct, and you'll notice that many of them are barges which have been exported to riverine mining jurisdictions like Angola, Congo, Sierra Leone, and so on.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, when did your relationship with Alexkor change from being a service provider providing vessels to being a mining contractor?
Alexkor outsourced its operations for the first time in its history in late 1998, and when the notices went out for independent contractors to apply for contractors, I did, and I was successful, and I began contract mining, operating a small 35-foot ski boat out of Alexander Bay Harbour in the last quarter of 1998.
Okay, and has that relationship endured until now?
I've been a active producer of diamonds for Alexkor, except for a period
page 4.
Between 7 November 2017 to 19th of March 2019. Those 16 months, I believe it was, were months during which my contract had been effectively cancelled and my access to the mine had been blocked.
Okay, thank you. But you are back now working with Alexkor,
From
the PSJV or Alexkor?
Yeah, well, it is a PSJV. I was an Alexkor contractor up until the inauguration of the PSJV in 2012, and I, to this day, with the exception of those, with that interregnum, I've been a contractor to the PSJV.
Okay, and the other members of the EAC, are they also contractors to the PSJV?
That is correct. The EAC members are all have either are or have been formerly contractors to Alexkor. There are one or two members that have contracted on non-Alexkor concessions, but they are probably only one or two.
Now, who determines where you can mine?
That depends on who owns the licenses. The West Coast diamond area is divided up into a grid alphanumerically running numerically north to south and alphabetically east to west. Those concession blocks are approximately 40 kilometers long. In the shallow waters, they run a kilometer out from the beach, and then you have the B concessions, which run about 5 kilometers. But where you work, first of all, depends on who you have a contract providing access to go and mine.
So in this case where the EAC is contracted to the PSJV, is that what you are saying?
All of the members of the PSJV all have contracts with the Alexkor PSJV to mine on the concession areas that they control and have ownership of. Now, having first gained access through a commercial agreement with a concession owner, the second level of access is governed by a cadastral system using very basic GIS technology where you use map data, digital map data, and then you use area marking system that you can register where you would like to work, and you may go and register areas and work them as long as they haven't been registered previously. And the standard area that we are allowed to mark as a 30-meter radius. So for instance, on Alexkor's 1A concession, running from the Orange River mouth about 40 kilometers south, you have maybe about 40 contractors that have contracts with Alexkor, and then they have 3 areas that they are allowed to mark along the coastline. And you're also allowed to move those areas, but you have to do it through a formal registration process done through the registry on the mine. And the registry on the mine keeps track of where all the various contractors are working, and to ensure that they are working in their registered blocks, and to allow for cancellation and re-registration of these blocks.
Okay. Now tell me, when you mine in these areas, what is the time frame that you are allowed to mine, and when is it determined that you need to now bring your hauls? Is there a time period that applies to when you can mine, when you can't? What determines?
you have what we call a weather window of opportunity. So, as I've explained, diver-based mining is highly dependent on calm weather conditions, and more specifically calm sea conditions, because you can have atmospheric conditions that are quite bad, but the sea conditions can still be quite good. So then it's more comfortable underwater actually than being on the vessel, because the vessel's been blown around and maybe dragging anchors and so on. But it's weather dependent, and also on capacity of the vessel that you're working. The amount of gravel that you have to produce, generally to produce 1 carat of diamonds, my grades used to be in the order of 12 carats on a cube. That's a cubic meter of gravel. But the vessel that I operate can hold about 30 cubes, and the density of marine gravel is about 1.6 tons per cube. So you're looking at around about 50 tons of gravel to produce a mere few grams of diamond. So when the vessel is full, you have to come and offload, or if the weather conditions are prohibitive, then even before the vessel is fully loaded, you have to return to the harbour and offload what gravel you do have and sit on the moorings until the weather improves.
Yes. Now, if you can tell us about Scarlet Sky Investments and your relationship with them, and bearing in mind that we've already heard the evidence of Mr. Torres. So when did you start having a relationship with Scarlet Sky? Do you have a relationship still?
The only relationship that I have with Scarlet Sky is a pending Kimberley High Court slap suit, which has still yet to be resolved, which they brought against me for defamation. But other than that, I've had no relationship with Scarlet Sky. They have simply been brought into my life as a contractor through the decisions and behaviors that were highlighted earlier today. So the adversarial nature of my relationship with Scarlet Sky began in 2016, because the minute that Scarlet Sky was awarded the contract, there was a lot of consternation amongst my fellow contractors at the time about the lack of transparency and the secrecy about who Scarlet Sky was. It was a strange name that nobody had heard before. No mention of diamonds anywhere in it. There was no track record. I myself at that time had, while still being a very active member of the Equitable Access campaign, I had not been able to focus too much attention in the early years from 2015 on Scarlet Sky, because I've been very involved in developing a piece of technology that's capable of being able to penetrate through the sediment overburden. Besides the politics and the dissipation in governance, the other factor that's prevented Alexkor and South Africa developing its marine mining. Ms. Abia, how did I get the relationship?
Yes.
Beg your pardon, sorry.
So you
Yes,
heard
you-
the question.
Yeah.
Yes, you can intervene when the
Yes.
witness seems to take
Yes.
long to answer your question.
Okay, so in the initial stages, I was not involved too much with the kickback from the contractors over Scarlet Sky, because I was devoting my attention, and I'd been traveling overseas.
It's okay. Thank you. Okay, so you weren't. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now tell me, in the chain of how the diamonds go from the mine to the public, tell us about that process, because you've told us where you can mine, you've told us what, you said the size, the size
the
of
volumes of gravel.
Yes, yes, and all of
Okay.
those things. So tell us about that process. From you now have this, you have a contract to mine for the PSJV. What happens from when you mine to where I buy my ring?
Okay. So as marine diamond mining contractors, our job is to produce diamond-bearing gravel off the seabed. We do that using specialized equipment designed specifically for that. We deliver the ore that we mine off the seabed to the harbor in Alexander Bay. That bulk gravel is held for a period at the harbor, possibly a day or two before it is transported inland to Alexkor's plant, situated near the administration building.
Is this done by the contractor? The mining contractor transports it to the
No,
Alexkor mine?
the contractor delivers the gravel to the harbor, and as soon as that gravel is offloaded from the vessel, control over that gravel falls into the hands of Alexkor, or the PSJV in this case. So Alexkor PSJV then transport the bulk gravel to the plant. When it arrives at the plant, it will be put into a gravel pound, which is fenced off, where there's security access. And it is usually the case that you don't bring your gravel straight from the harbor and put it into the plant, because there are other contractors that are ahead of you that are processing gravel. So when you arrive at the plant, you will stand in a queue. You might have to wait an hour or two, but when your gravel is ready to be processed, they will flush the system, and then they will start what we call drawing your gravel out of a surge bin.
Is that done in the presence of the contractor?
That is correct. The contractors are called to the gravel pound when it is time to fill the bins, and it is the contractors working together with Alexkor PSJV personnel that use a front-end loader to hoist the gravel up above the feed bins, and then the contractors manually open up the bottom of the bulk bags to allow the gravel that's been placed in it while out at sea. Because when we mine out at sea, the gravel that gets kept on the vessel to be processed is only a certain fraction of the full amount of material that comes off the seabed. So it's maybe plus 2 millimeters, minus 25 millimeters that gets retained and stored in those bulk bags. But at the plant, those same bulk bags that get filled while you're out at sea then get emptied into the gravel bin. From the gravel bin, the gravel then reports to the first phase of the recovery process. And that is to reduce the bulk of the diamond-bearing material.
Okay, Mr. Craythorne, I think you are possibly giving us too much detail.
Okay.
So what I need you to tell me are the steps that
Before it gets to the
that are
sales.
involved, yes,
Okay.
in the process.
So,
And when you are explaining that part, all of that, you must just remember to tell me whether the contractor is there, the contractor is keeping an eye on what's going on, or who is doing what. But
Okay.
very high level, Mr. Craythorne. We
Understood.
don't want to know about the separating and what falls out and
understood.
at this stage.
So when it arrives at the plant, it goes through three distinct phases, where eventually, from perhaps 50 tons of gravel, you'll end up with maybe 10 or 15 carats. Sometimes you have a huge amount of diamonds from very little gravel, and the converse is also true. The grades are very erratic. But the time that the gravel is being processed inside the plant is controlled by PSJV personnel called plant operators. In addition to the plant operators, there are also outsourced security personnel and in-source security personnel that patrol the plant. And as the gravel progresses through the plant, the risk of theft grows greater, because you start off with a very large needle in a haystack. You start off with a needle in a very large haystack, and that haystack gets progressively smaller and smaller. And as the haystack gets smaller, the risk of theft becomes greater, because it's easier to...
Is the contractor there at the time?
The contractor is not there all the time, but the contractor is always at the final recovery, where the diamonds are fed onto, the super concentrate, the remains.
No, Mr. Craythorne, don't tell us about the super concentrate in that much detail.
That's where
We
the glove
need to-
boxes are.
Yes, but you need to tell us that the diamonds get from the harbor to this place for
Okay.
the purposes of sifting, for example. I don't want to be feeding you evidence.
Okay, so
But I'm
I'll
just
try and-
explaining that we
okay.
don't need to know the actual process as if we are present when this
Okay.
is happening.
So
When it comes to matters that you know are not controversial, you can later on those.
Yes, yes.
On matters which you know won't be disputed by anybody.
Thank
Like
you.
I'm sure the processes that you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. So once the product has been recovered, it then gets weighed in through a process controlled by Alexkor. There's a register, a little register, which is colloquially referred to as a inweegboekie. The inweegboekie is a book which is countersigned by the contractor as well as the Alexkor PSJV representative, where you record the quantity and the weight of the diamonds that have been recovered, and generally stones over 1 carat are weighed and recorded also individually.
And then what happens when you have recorded the stones that have been recovered?
At that point, the diamonds are then put into a safe custody, and we are given a receipt out of the inweegboekie. And unless you go to the sales, that is the last that you see of your diamonds.
What happens to the diamonds?
So the diamonds then are, they accumulate during what is referred to as a production cycle. So a production cycle is the period from when there's a production cutoff to enable the mine to reconcile its production for a period and prepare the production in that period for sale, and when the next period starts. So
So the diamonds are kept in whose custody?
It's
In
kept-
the PSJV's custody during this period?
during this period, while the diamonds are still on the mine, it is kept in the PSJV safe custody.
And when the production cycle is finished,
At the end of the production cycle, they issue a close-off notice to say to the contractors, no more production will be included in the upcoming sale beyond a certain date. So if they issue a cut-off date, say for the end of January, say what usually happens is you have a flurry of processing taking place before the plant closes, but at the end of the day on January the 30th, no more production will then be included for the upcoming sale.
so what happens to the diamonds at the end of the cycle, the diamonds that have been kept in the custody of the PSJV?
Those diamonds are then counted and weighed and sieved, what they call, well, you have two.
No. That's too much detail.
Okay. Well, at the close of the production cycle, the diamonds are then transported up to Johannesburg for presentation to the state diamond trader.
By whom? Who transports the diamonds up to Johannesburg and who presents them to the state diamond trader?
I do not know who transports the diamonds from what we call the mine gate. It's an industry term. When your diamonds leave the mine, you talk about the diamonds leave the mine gate. We don't know who conducts that service or what form of transport is used, but the diamonds are transported to Johannesburg, and then they are placed into a safe and secure area called Knox Vault in Johannesburg, where Daniel Nathan has his premises. It's below the place where Kuben Mudley has his safety deposit box.
Okay, we don't know about all of that.
Okay.
Whose custody is it given to?
It's given to Scarlet Sky.
So it's only given to Scarlet Sky when it arrives in Johannesburg?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And then, that is the level of the relationship that you have with Scarlet Sky. What do they do with the diamonds that you have mined?
The diamonds that the contractors, such as myself, mine, are
Remember, we're now just talking about Scarlet Sky. And what do they do when they receive your diamonds?
When they receive the diamonds, they prepare them for viewing for the state diamond trader to select their 10% representative sample. They select 5% for beneficiation, and the balance, 85%, then goes on auction at their premises. But I've never been to those auctions. Some of my colleagues have been up to the auctions, but I've never been. And
then you next hear when you get your money. Is that when you next hear what has happened with your diamond?
Well, a sales cycle from the time that the diamonds leave the mine gate until the time that they've gone through prep for the auction and the payout is usually about 2 weeks. It's about a 2-week period from the time that your diamonds leave the mine till the time that you get paid out.
Okay. So, you have said that your relationship, you did not have any problem with SSI at the beginning.
I did not have any problem with SSI in the beginning.
Okay. And who determined the price at which your diamonds were being sold?
Well, the diamonds are supposed to be valued on the mine for 2 reasons. Number one is to insure the diamonds for their fair value. Because if you do not analyze your diamond production, you cannot attach a fair value to the diamond. So you can't just look at the size of the diamonds and the stone size frequency distribution. You've got to analyze the color as well. You've got to look at the special stones.
Yes, so who determines the value at which your diamonds are sold?
It's a lady by the name of Michelle Adams, who is an employee of Alexkor, who is involved in the management of the final stages of the diamond recovery process. And
so
then
the value of the price at which your diamond will be sold is determined by Ms. Adams?
No, she doesn't determine the price at which it's sold.
That's the question.
No, she doesn't determine the price at which it should be at which it would be sold, but she makes a very inaccurate assessment of what the value is in order for insurance purposes.
Yes.
Did you
Now-
say inaccurate?
Yes, because any valuation, Chairperson, based solely on the size, which is the first of the 4 C's, the carat weight. So if you pick up a rough diamond and it weighs 4 carats, you can pick up another diamond that also weighs 4 carats, and simply because of the difference in the other 3 C's, one stone could be worth $40, and the other stone could be worth $40,000. So by simply conducting a valuation on the basis of stone size is a wasted exercise.
So you say that she conducts effectively a useless exercise?
That is correct.
Yes. Ms. Beer?
Thank you.
I think your question still stands.
Yes, it does.
Ultimately, when you sell the price, that's what she
Yes.
wants.
Okay.
Who determines how much you will sell it for?
That is supposed to be determined by what we call price discovery.
Price?
Price discovery.
What is that?
Proper price discovery is where you have a competitive bidding process where buyers.
An auction.
An auction is a classic example of true price discovery, but the auction has to be an honest auction. If you have collusion, then you're not going to have price discovery. So if it is an auction that is designed to allow for sharing of critical price information, then you defeat the whole price discovery mechanism.
But there must be a basis upon which somebody who has the relevant knowledge and expertise and experience should be able to say, if you take this piece of diamond, that person having analyzed, conducted whatever analysis is required, should be able to say, if you go to sell it at an auction, you should fetch not less than so much and maybe not more than so much. So therefore, its price must be in the region of. Somebody must be able to say that, isn't it?
In a fair world, that would be the case, but for as long as I've been a contractor at Alexkor, contractors have never been allowed to critically analyze the value of their diamonds. You have a brief look when you recover your diamonds, but then it goes to the auction process. In the case of Scarlet Sky, and previously it was an auction process conducted on SIDEX, which is South African Diamond Index, which Alexkor had been using. And in earlier years, it was done on an exclusive purchase agreement where there was absolutely no price discovery. A subsidiary of De Beers would come and look at the diamonds, set a price, and take the diamonds. So the history, in the time that I've been a contractor for Alexkor, the history of diamond pricing has been an extremely contentious issue, with the exception of the period between 2006 until 2011, where there was a reasonable period of price discovery. You will always have collusion at auctions, but you need to try and control it and put countermeasures in place to make it as difficult as possible. When in 2006,
I was going to say, you seem to be wanting to drive us.
okay,
There.
but it's not as simple to say, how does the diamond price?
Ms. Bia, continue.
Yes, I don't think you've actually told us
Well,
who determines.
the buyers determine it.
Okay, so it's the buyer that determines. Does anyone set a benchmark that it must not be lower than this price?
Well, that is where there is a big problem in the case of Scarlet Sky, because the company that is conducting the auction is also the company that is doing the valuations. So if there is collusion taking place during auctions and the prices achieved on auction are extremely low, there is no safety measure in place to prevent the sale of the diamonds. So your reserve price is extremely important, because if you have collusion and you have an honest reserve price, you won't have sales going through.
So the reserve price is set by SSI?
The reserve price has been set by SSI since late 2005 for the period from about March to October.
2005?
Sorry, 2015, I beg your pardon. There was another valuator that was valuing the diamonds. That valuator was dismissed by Mr. Carstens. And then the function of valuing our diamonds was then given to Scarlet Sky.
So how do you, as a miner, know that your diamond is being undervalued or is being sold at the right price?
You don't know on a sale-by-sale basis. Now,
this question is being asked because you have alleged in your affidavit
yeah, but I'm qualifying
that
it.
they are being sold
Yeah.
for less than their value. So
on a sale-by-sale basis, it's very difficult to pinpoint, because the type of production that you have can vary on a sale-by-sale basis.
Mr. Craythorne, okay, you are telling me how it is difficult to ascertain. I need you to tell me, you're saying that on a sale-by-sale basis,
Yes.
you can't say that your diamond is being sold for a lower value.
Yeah.
So on what basis can you
Statistically, using statistical methods, using longitudinal studies, which is what I've done, is I've tracked Alexkor's pricing from 2000, using very basic statistical treatments. I've used the price data that Alexkor provide with every sale. I've then created indexes for the various assortments of the mixed goods, which are the diamonds below 6.8 carats. Diamonds larger than 6.8 carats are not sold as mixed, what we refer to as mixed goods. They are sold as individual diamonds, and the pricing information relating to those individual diamonds is only disclosed to the person that actually mined the diamond. Whereas in the case of the goods below 6.8 carats, there are 14 standard assortments into which all of the diamonds below 6.8 carats are sorted into using a standard sieving process. So you'll have your 5-carat diamonds, your 6-carat diamonds, your 4-carat, and so on. So
you said you created your own indices.
I created my own indices based on the information that's published for diamonds below 6.8 carats. I then benchmarked that pricing data going all the way back to 2000, because the Zimnisky index data goes back to 2000, and I began really working at Alexkor around about that time. Dimedel only arrived in 2000, and it was at that point that we started receiving brokers' notes with a breakdown of what the prices are, because the diamonds that you produce, you are paid out pro rata on your contribution for each category.
So what do you put, you've now mentioned the Zeminski index. What else do you use to compare and see?
So what I've done is I've tabulated all of the pricing data over 20 years for each of the standard 14 assortments. I've created indices for each of those assortments, which I've then benchmarked with the Zeminski index. And what's important when you're analyzing diamond prices is not the absolute price, but the relative price. Because you don't, by looking at the absolute price, you don't know if you got a good price or not. You need to look at what the market is doing at that particular time and compare what your price was for similar goods at the same time. So, starting in 2000, I compared the pricing behavior of each of the 14 standard assortments of Alexkor diamonds against an internationally recognized index, which demonstrated very, very clearly that from 2000 to 2006, there was a rapidly increasing tracking error. Now, tracking error is simply the difference by which the asset that you are interested in is differing in relation to the market in which it's been sold.
So how much
Ms.
it doesn't...
Leah, just
Yes.
remember to keep your eye on the relevance and importance of
Yes.
some of these things
Yes,
in relation to what we are looking at.
we are digging, Chair, but that's where we're going.
Yeah, just keep an eye on
So
the real issues.
Yes.
To sum up then, Chairperson, the prices of Alexkor's diamonds deteriorated dramatically in relation to the international benchmarks between the period 2000 to 2006, when Alexkor went onto the open market. From 2006 to 2011, the prices performed much, much better, significantly so. And from 2011...
Did they then correlate with the market in general?
Yeah, so when there was very little correlation in the first period from 2000 to 2006. Mm-hmm. There was a period of normalization from 2006 to 2011, and where prices were very closely correlated with what the market was doing. And then subsequent to 2011, from 2012, they again worsened dramatically. What
changed in 2012?
In 2012, all of South Africa's rough diamond prices suffered a massive drop. The drop came about as a result of a piece of legislation that became effective in 2011. It's Section 20A of the Diamond Act. Up until the end of 2011, when rough diamonds were sold locally in South Africa, licensed diamond buyers were allowed to visit auctions in Kimberley or in Johannesburg, anywhere around the country, in partnership with international buyers. What Section 20A did was it prohibited local licensed buyers from being accompanied by international buyers. So that took out the international competitiveness out of South Africa's local auction system. It caused such a lot of consternation in the market, it resulted in a constitutional court case, which was finalized, I think, in I don't want to quote the date, but it did find its way all the way up to the Constitutional Court. And it was based on the issues around Section 20A.
Yes. Now, you say in your affidavit on page 5 that by 2013, in paragraph 14, you say by 2013, the marine diamond production of the PSJV traded on average at 30.2% below the market.
That's correct. That is a weighted average. So it's, to make the analysis more manageable, and for purposes of this submission, I took the 14 indexes that I created and fused them into one general index, but taking into account the different weightings, because different categories of diamonds have different values, and depending on the quantity that they make up of a production affects the overall average price. And based on that composite index, by my calculation at that time, Alexkor's prices were trading 30.2% below the market.
And what was the response of the EAC to this, to the fact that their diamonds that they were mining were trading 30.2%? Was there a response by the EAC?
No, at this stage, the EAC was not very active in dealing with this matter.
So what was the response of the joint venture? What did they do to counter what they saw as the falling prices?
Well, the PSJV, like everybody else, was very alarmed. And their analysis of the situation was that there was a problem with the current service provider doing the marketing and sales, called Diamond Marketing Consultants. And the technical committee of the PSJV made a recommendation to the board that the board rotate the then marketing and sales service provider to do a test.
How do you know this, those intimate details of what was happening inside the JV?
Well, the contractors were informed by the PSJV that the PSJV was very unhappy with the price performance under the then service provider and wanted to do a trial run using a new service provider. So they brought in a company on a trial basis called Fusion Alternatives, and for a period Fusion Alternatives then took over the function from the previous service provider.
And did the prices improve?
Not markedly. In fact, in some instances, they actually deteriorated further.
And it was at that point that the PSJV advertised a tender that resulted in the award to SSI, am I correct?
That is correct. And in hindsight now, that should be the point at which the PSJV should have realized that we were dealing with a problem totally unrelated to the marketing and sales. The etiology of the problem lay somewhere else.
Okay.
But they pushed on ahead and got permission to launch a tender process to bring in a permanent new marketing and sales service provider, which culminated in the issuing of a tender in 2014 in October, I believe.
Okay. Now, Mr. Craythorne, you go into a bit of detail in your affidavit regarding what you call irregular tender process followed in the appointment of Scarlet Sky. You've heard the evidence of Mr. Torres before you. Now, firstly, just explain to the chairperson how you came to have the detail that you've included in your affidavit, because we understand that Mr. Torres, his company was instructed by the department to conduct an investigation. So where do you get the authority to speak to these things? How do you know these things that you are speaking about here?
Chairperson, from 2016 through from 2015, when Scarlet Sky started marketing and selling our diamonds, through 2016, the diamond prices got progressively worse. It was generating a huge amount of anger amongst the members of the EAC. My fellow EAC founding member, Mr. George Nicolai, would regularly be stopped in the main street of Port Nolloth by angry members asking us when are we going to do something about the problem relating to diamond prices. And in 2017, I then did a very brief analysis which reflected the difference between the international prices and what we were getting. And I then posted those prices at the entrance to the mine. That was at approximately 4 o'clock in the morning when I was actually on my way to go to sea. I didn't think it was a big deal. Everybody knew that there was a problem. So I thought, well, I was doing everybody a favor by just adding some, analytical contribution to the consternation. That had some very immediate and severe consequences. The data that I put up was in the form of a curve, an index, basically just comparing the performance of Alexkor's diamond prices with the market. And there were security cameras filming this taking place. The security, unbeknown to me, because I put the data up, went into the mine, and went to sea. And when I came back a day or two later, there was a very angry letter from Mr. Mervyn Carstens saying that I was causing trouble by trying to generate anger amongst the contractors and our members for posting untrue information at the entrance to the mine. And I was warned that I would be suspended if I continued to cause anger amongst the members, when in actual fact it was the anger of the members that was driving me, not the other way around.
And then what was the outcome of that? Because remember, you are answering the question of how did you come to know about the irregular tender process?
I was warned to back off on the issue of the diamond prices, which I did for a while, but because the problem just was getting so out of hand, I started making further inquiries about who were the individuals behind Scarlet Sky, because nobody knew. So I wrote to Reagan Phillips and I requested information. That information was denied, and the situation escalated to the point where my contract, first of all, my access into the mine was cancelled. Shortly thereafter, the contract upon which Ocean Diggers operates was also cancelled, together with my fellow EAC colleagues. And following that, I then put a lot of effort into trying to get to the bottom of what was going on.
Because you had all the time.
Because I had the time now. So I started digging, and I started collaborating with other people in the anti-state capture project, you could call it. And it was brought to my attention that one of the shareholders in Scarlet Sky was Mr. Kuben Moodley. And that was the point at which we realized what was going on. And
what did you know about Kuben Moodley?
Well, he had been mentioned in the Public Protector's State of Capture report, and that was good enough for us to say, well, look, there's a problem here. So his name popped up, in Amabungani and Daily Maverick and all over the show.
In what context did his name pop up?
In relation to there was irregularities at the SABC. There was irregularities in relation to Transnet and Eskom.
And how did he feature there?
He featured as a close lieutenant of the Gupta family.
Okay.
So with that knowledge in hand, I then again confronted Mervyn Carstens and said to him, listen, you need to do something about this because this is why the diamond prices are so shocking. And I wrote a very, very confrontational email, but I felt it was the only thing that I could do at the time, where I said straight up, listen, you're dealing with a state capture issue here. Yeah, and you need to suspend this contract immediately.
Okay, remember you are answering the question.
Okay, how did I get the information?
Yes.
Well, what far from being received, with my efforts to help understand what was busy going on, were met then with some threat from Weber Wenzel on behalf of Mr. Carstens, where they threatened me with legal action if I did not refrain from. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Yeah, it was Weber Wenzel. I've had 2 slap suits, and I refused to back down. So I got hit with a slap suit, and I found myself very quickly having to learn how to defend myself, and that's when I started looking even closer and closer and digging into what was going on. I caused certain questions to be asked in Parliament via Veronica van Dijk about who these guys were, what licenses did they have, and I had to very, very quickly get to grips with the law because my life depended on it. So I successfully defended myself against Weber Wenzel and Mervyn Carstens, only to 1 month later being hit with another slap suit from Mr. Victor and Kwashu.
Mr. Craythorne?
That's where I got that information. That's how I learned. I had to defend myself, Chairperson, and...
So
did you get some of the information from the court papers that were served on you?
No, my court papers.
Or when you were
prepared
to defend yourself? When I defended myself on the basis of you guys are acting illegally because you don't have the licenses, and I confronted them.
But how did you know that they did not have the license?
Because they were told him, because the questions that are caused to be answered in Parliament admitted that they did not have the license.
Okay, can I refer you to page 270, 270.
Okay, and there.
Is this the question you are talking about? Because you mentioned now that you mentioned a Miss Van Dijk.
That's correct, yeah. So this is the question.
Page 200 and?
270.
217.
No, 270.
270.
Yes, yes, Chair.
This is the parliamentary question which I caused Ms. Veronica van Dijk to ask in Parliament.
Question number 1267.
That's correct.
Did you ask all these questions, or was there a specific one that you were asking?
I provided the questions to Ms. van Dijk, and she processed these questions through Parliament, through their processes. And then the answer was provided, and it's recorded here on page 272.
Okay, so the first question that you caused to be asked was the question marked 1.
That's correct.
And you were questioning if there was a track record for Scarlet Sky Investments prior to them being appointed by Alexkor.
Correct.
What made you ask this question?
because it was one of the minimum requirements, or rather it was part of the tender specifications that had been issued when the PSJV sent out their RFP.
So you remember this in 2018, that there had been this issue in 2014?
Well, I looked back in the records to find what, at the time that the tender was issued, what the specifications were.
What put you in a position to question these things? What information were you armed with that led you to dig deeper and ask these kinds of questions? You've told us about your court case. Was this after your research? What did you discover in your research that led you here?
Throughout the period from the time that my access into the mine was cancelled, I began a rigorous process of discovery, trying to find out. And that was an ongoing process right up until the time that I finished my affidavit for the Zondo Commission.
Okay.
So it's been a process of discovery, and the revelations that have come about have been through a process of ongoing research and requesting information, contacting the regulator to inquire whether Scarlet Sky in fact did have a license, and they informed me that Scarlet Sky did not have a license. So I wasn't only just relying on one source of information, I was double checking it through the regulator as well. So both the regulator and Department of Public Enterprises confirmed that Scarlet Sky did not have the minimum requirement of licenses.
Okay, so let's go back to page 270.
Okay.
So the question that was asked was whether Scarlet Sky Investments had a track record prior to its appointment, and the answer appears below at the bottom of the page. And the answer that they gave was that Alexkor gave, was that the company had no track record until Mr. Daniel Nathan, with 20 years experience within the diamond industry, was appointed as a director of SSI in 2014.
That's correct.
Okay.
Even that must be inaccurate, because that's not the track record of the company. That's the track record of an individual.
That is correct. And the date, his directorship only became effective on the 4th of December. So he was appointed in November, but the records that I access show that he actually only became effective as a director on the 4th of December, even after the tender process.
But the fact of the matter is, if you answer the question whether the company had a track record in this industry, the answer is no.
Correct.
The fact that at some stage an individual got involved in the company who had 20 years experience doesn't give the company 20 years experience track record.
That's how I looked at it.
And the next question was question 2A, why has no beneficiation for the community taken place since the appointment of the specified company by Alexkor? And what are the details of how transferring the sale of diamonds to the company has impacted on the value returned to Alexkor and the miners? Why did you ask this question?
I asked this question because that was one of their main selling points.
Whose main selling point?
Scarlet Sky. Because when we were, as contractors, raising major concerns about their poor performance in attaining fair diamond prices for us, there was feedback from the PSJV saying that they were doing a lot for the Richtersveld community.
And the answer that they gave was that beneficiation is taking place in Houghton and has been taking place since 2015, and that SSI currently employs learners from the community.
That's correct, but as far as I'm aware, there have been no lasting, or as far as I know, there have been no qualified cutters or polishers that have emerged out of any of the commitments that Scarlet Sky made to the Richtersveld community.
They continue to say beneficiation contributes an additional 9% income to the pooling and sharing joint venture to income after the tender process.
Well, part of the agreement with regards to beneficiation of diamonds was that the contractors would share in any upside. And to my knowledge, no contractors have shared in any upside of the diamonds that have been taken out of the production for beneficiation. So if there has been 9%, that should have been shared in the same ratio as the contractor's contract to mine those diamonds stands. So if a contractor has a 50% deal to mine a diamond for Alexkor, and that diamond then goes for beneficiation, you get paid out on a valuation price, but whatever the upside is, subsequent to polishing and the sale, if there is a 9% additional value add, that was supposed to have been shared 50% to the PSJV and 50% to the contractor after the beneficiator had taken his percentage.
The next question is, on what basis was the company, SSI, again awarded the contract in November 2016? That's the first part of the question, and then they continue with the next part of the question. Now, their response to the question posed on 3A, on what basis was the company again awarded a contract in November 2016? Their response is long, but at the end of it is that it says, well, let me start at the top. It says the process included the RFP, which was advertised in the government tender bulletin of 31 October 2014, as well as the business day of 2014. Do you agree that this was not for the 2016 tender?
No, that's for, I beg your pardon, that was for the previous tender.
Yes, and then it continues. 7 companies expressed their interest in RFP 03 of 2014 and submitted proposals. Also in relation to the previous one.
Yeah, because the convention, the numbering convention that you see in the RFP relates to the year, the 2014, indicates that that was an RFP from 2014.
Yes. And then it continues and it says, Gamero Advisory Services were appointed by the Alexkor PSJV board to evaluate the proposals received.
That's correct?
The top 3 companies, according to the evaluation scores, were invited to present to the Alexkor PSJV board tender committee.
Correct.
Following the presentation and assessment of the SSI bid proposal, the Alexkor PSJV board was satisfied with the prices and proposals submitted by SSI. The Alexkor PSJV board appointed SSI with effect from 1 March 2018. Is any of this correct in answer to the question of on what basis was the company awarded a contract in November 2016?
Not at all.
Why do you say that?
Well, it doesn't make sense because they're conflating the first tender process with the second tender process, and they talk about a date being an effective date being the 1st of March 2018, which it couldn't possibly have been.
Because the question is
2016.
specific, yes,
Yeah.
is specific to 2018, to 2016, sorry. So Alexkor didn't answer this question.
No.
The next part of the question is, why is there no longer an independent valuator model included in the company's contract? You can see their answer there in B,
Well,
and it says the independent valuator process was stopped after some of the contractors complained about beneficiation, and it was decided that the diamonds selected for beneficiation process will be paid based on the tender price of the goods.
Well, I don't know what to make of that, because again, it seems to be conflating different issues. For instance, the original bid that Scarlet Sky made, and the basis upon which they were provisionally awarded, successfully awarded the tender at the close of 2014, was an exclusive purchasing agreement akin to what was in place from 2000 to 2006 with Dimedal. And they had made it very clear, according to their expert opinion in their bid documents, that because of the introduction of Section 20A, auction processes would no longer be the optimum solution for achieving fair diamond prices, and that Alexkor would need to consider what they refer to as a proprietary independent valuator model. So they were trying to resurrect the same arrangement that we had fought so hard against when De Beers were buying Alexkor's diamonds. And that bid, which had cast dispersions on the tender system, or their tender documents, all of a sudden in January, without any explanation, they do a flip-flop and change their proposal from what they had initially proposed, which was what they refer to as their proprietary valuation model, to the tender process. So something happened over the holiday period, resulting in a complete about-turn by which they then embraced the same sales model which they had themselves cast aspersions on. And then on top of it, won the tender.
And the next part of their question is, who made the decision? Now, I'm not sure whether the decision that is being referred to is the absence of an independent valuator model, or whether the decision they're talking about is the award to SSI.
It seems to me they've cannibalized some facts and mixed them up, because in a certain way it is true, they did abandon the valuator model, but they abandoned it over December, and yet for the first year there was still an independent valuator. So it seems to me that even though this company had agreed that tender was the way to go, that at least for the first few sales that were conducted, they were done on a valuation basis, not on an auction basis. And at the point at which the independent valuator then became redundant, he was dismissed. So it's very confusing, actually, and it's difficult to make head or tail of what was going on. But it doesn't make sense, and it certainly didn't answer my question.
Now, I'll move on to question number 4.
Yes.
Question number 4 says, is the specified company a licensed diamond trader? Now, who are we referring to when we say the specified company?
Scarlet Sky, the company that won the contract.
Yes. So, is the specified company a licensed diamond trader and the premises licensed as a tender house? The answer is contained in page 272.
The answer that was given was that the diamond dealer license that SSI did not have a diamond dealer's license. It was in a different company called Diamond Trading House. I beg your pardon, called Daniel Nathan Trading.
Where does it say SSI does not have a license, Mr.
Okay, I beg your pardon,
Craythorne?
sorry. Can I just read it?
Yes,
Okay, in terms of
that's why I referred you to the page.
In terms of the South African Diamonds and Precious Metals Regulator, prescripts, a license is issued to an individual diamond dealer or to a company, diamond trading house. In this instance, Mr. Daniel Nathan is the holder of the required diamond dealer license.
Do they say anything about the specified company?
Nothing.
So do they answer the question of whether SSI has a license?
No.
Is it true what they are saying in their answer, that Mr. Daniel Nathan is the holder of a required diamond dealer license?
No, it's not true. The license is held in a company called Daniel Nathan Trading CC.
So none of this part of the question, of the answer is true.
With regard to the Diamond Trading House, I'm not sure regarding that license, but certainly in the case of the diamond dealer license, it's not true.
But Mr. Craythorne, they don't say anything about issuing of a diamond trading house license.
No, in their answer,
Yes.
they say. So
No.
I don't know if that answer is true, because you have a diamond dealer license, and then the premises that the diamond dealer conducts trading activities on has to be licensed as well.
Yes.
So I'm not, as far as I'm aware, there's no license for that as well, as far as Scarlet Sky goes.
You're conflating issues,
Yeah.
Mr. Craythorne,
Let me
because
not.
they don't say that Nathan has or doesn't have a trading
Okay.
house. They're just telling us the fact of how licenses are issued.
Okay.
So that's all they're telling us there. Now, I want to take you back to question number 3A, because now I want to refer you to documentation. So question number 3A is the one that was asking on what basis was the company again awarded the contract in November 2016. And the answer was contained on the next page, in page 271. Now, we will note that it says, when it deals firstly with the wrong contract, in that it deals with the process that was followed for the 2014 tender process, correct?
Correct.
All right. And then at the end, it says, the Alexkor board appointed SSI with effect from 1 March 2018, which is also incorrect.
I agree.
So they don't explain why the company was awarded another contract a year after it had been awarded a contract.
They don't.
Okay. Now, just to complete that thought, can I refer you to bundle number 2? So it's a different bundle altogether.
I have the bundle.
Yes, please turn to page 263. Page 263.
This is mining bundle 2.
Yes, thank
What
you,
is the
Chair.
page? that you-
263.
263.
It's underneath the tab marked 3.
Page 263.
Yes.
I have it.
Okay, this document is the agreement to market, value, and sell diamonds between Alexkor RMC JV and Scarlet Sky Investments 60 Pty Ltd.
Correct.
Now, if we take this document and turn to page 268,
I have it in front of me.
In clause 4.1, it says this agreement shall commence on the signature date and shall continue in force for a period of 3 years. Do you see that?
I see that.
Okay. And then we can turn to page 284 of the same bundle.
I have it in front of me.
So we see in that page that the signature date is the 4th of March 2015.
That is correct.
So we know that this agreement started on the 4th of March 2015,
Correct.
appointing SSI to market and sell the diamonds for the PSJV.
Correct.
Now, if I take you further in the same bundle to page 295, 295.
I have it in front of me.
This document is called the Agreement to Market, Value, Sell, and Beneficiation of Diamonds between Alexkor RMC JV and Scarlet Sky Investments 60 Pty Ltd. Same parties, correct?
Correct.
Same kind of contract, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now I take you to page 300.
I have it in front of me.
If we look towards the bottom of the page, you will see in bold number 4, commencement and duration. Do you see that?
I do.
Now in 4.1 it says, similarly, this agreement shall commence on the signature date and shall continue in force for a period of 5 years. So the difference is that the previous one said it would continue for 3 years. This one says for 5 years. But this contract also commences on signature date, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now we go.
Did this one replace the 2015 one, or did they run parallel to each other?
That's the answer we don't have, Chairperson, because it's the answer that was not given at to the parliamentary question.
In the second agreement, does it not say what its relationship is with the previous agreement?
No.
Okay, all right.
And then on page 317,
I have it in front of me.
we can see that it now says this agreement is signed on the 6th of October 2016.
That's correct.
And as we have already seen, it starts from signature date. So this means that this contract started in October 2016, when previously they had signed with the same company in March 2015 for 3 years.
Correct.
So clearly, the question related to the second contract. The question in Parliament that said on what basis was the company again awarded the contract in November 2016. So they are talking about the second contract.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, Ms. Sibia,
the date is
the
different.
answer to my question is to be found in clause 30 of the second agreement. It says this agreement supersedes any previous agreements between any of the parties in relation to the matters dealt with in this agreement.
Yes, yes.
So the second agreement replaced the first agreement.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Chair. Now, the question that has been posed was on what basis was the company again awarded a contract in November 2016? We note that this is October 2016, but on a reading, do we know of any contract that was awarded to SSI in November as opposed to the one in October 2016?
No, they provided no clarity to my question that I posed via the parliamentary process.
Okay, I think you misunderstood my question. The question talks to November 2016, but we can see that this contract was signed in October 2016. You caused the question to be asked. Were you talking about this contract signed in October 2016, or were you talking about a different contract?
I was talking about the second contract because we had heard.
This contract?
Yeah, we had heard that there had been a subsequent contract.
Okay.
So, but that's all we were told.
Okay, so you assumed the time to be November 2016?
2016, yeah. So my understanding was that there had been a contract initiated in 2015, which was supposed to run for 3 years. Then we had heard via the grapevine that another contract had been issued in 2016.
Yes.
But no clarity as to how that came about was offered, and that's why I asked the question via Parliament.
So, do you agree that it is incorrect to say in page 271, paragraph 3A, Roman numeral V, 5, where they say, the Alexkor PSJV board appointed SSI with effect from 1 March 2018.
I beg your pardon, can you just refer me to that page number again? 271?
271, yes.
Okay, so
And the paragraph is 3A, Roman numeral 5, the V.
are we still in mining 02?
Oh, my apologies.
Okay.
I have left you behind.
No worries.
We are back in mining 04. My apologies, Chair.
Has it not become clear that a substantial part of that answer is not an answer to the question, and particularly about the basis on which the contractor was awarded?
Yes, Chair, but there's also the issue of the date, because,
2018,
yes,
but that's obvious, isn't it?
yes,
Yeah.
that the contract itself said it's effective on signature, and signature was in 2016.
Yeah.
So everything that was answered here was not true.
That is correct.
Thank you very much. Now, what else did you find out about that was not correct in the appointment? Because you haven't yet told us what you discovered was incorrect. You've told us that you asked and discovered that SSI did not have a license through your questions that you caused to be asked in Parliament.
Before you answer that question, can I just get this out of the way? As far as the second contract is concerned, that was not the subject of, that was not preceded by any competitive tender process, was it?
As far as I'm aware, Chairman, if I recall, I remember seeing a copy of a request for proposal, but I can't be sure on that because everything is so hazy, you know, and it's difficult for me to keep track of it. But I do recall seeing something of a repeat.
Yes.
But I can't recall exactly where and what, but it seems to me that to some degree there was some attempt to have an RFP.
Yes. Do we know what the answer is?
Yes, Chair. It's the one that Mr. Torres was answering about when he said he asked the company secretary what role they played. And the company secretary, Ms. Reagan Phillips, then said, although they were called a BEC, all they did was...
Where there was no evaluation.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So that's the second contract.
But did Ms. Phillips' response to him reveal that there had been a request for proposals or not really?
Chair, we didn't deal with that detail, but it is part of the report of the Kobodo report that to which Mr. Torres was testifying, and it appears that there was, but it seemed to have been a foregone conclusion. And he indicates that he does not know why there was a need for the second.
Yes, well, you'll just have to double check things with regard to that report, because it transpired while he was giving evidence that he was not asking some of the most obvious questions he should have asked.
Noted.
So if he has reached certain conclusions, we have got to, or made certain findings, we have got to double check that those findings are sustainable.
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
But in as far as there having been a process, that's the one that had the minimum requirements, and I referred us to the document that indicated the minimum requirements in the whole tender document that went out. So, but we will double check.
Yes, so what I'm going to say is, if they say there was no process, double check that that's factually true. That's what I want.
Yes, thank you. Now, can I take you back to the identified irregularities in relation to the appointment of Scarlet Sky that you referred to on page 6 of your affidavit? Now, I had asked, how did you get to the detail? Because the detail in the affidavit is on the 21st of October, the process was initiated, and then you go on to detail what happened in the technical committee and the tender advertisement and all those things. So I had asked, how did you get this information for you to give it in this commission as your evidence?
Chairperson, there was a lot of unhappiness from the Richtersveld community over the issue of Scarlet Sky and the diamond prices and the manner in which the tender was awarded, and that led to a complaint being made by a attorney acting for certain members in the Richtersveld community, because there are divisions within the Richtersveld community. So this particular attorney was only acting on behalf of, or under instructions from one particular faction. But he certainly...
Did you get the information from the attorney?
No, that information, I got it from a gentleman called Peter de Wet, who's a Richtersveld member, who also made a complaint to to DPE regarding the Scarlet Sky issue. But flowing out of the complaint to the public protector, an arrangement was, and there was an agreement between the parties, between Minister Lynn Brown, the public protector, and that particular attorney, that Alexkor's own Audit and Risk Committee would do an investigation into the circumstances surrounding the appointment of Scarlet Sky. And as a result of that report, which I was given a copy of from Sam Sol, because I also blew the whistle to Amabangani in the early days, and Sam and I have shared information. So Sam, when he started doing queries into the whole Alexkor PSJV story, and which led to him writing quite an in-depth expose on it, he was given a copy of this document, which he passed on to me, and this document provides a lot of the timeline surrounding the appointment of SSA, when the need for a new marketing and sales service provider was identified, and then the events that followed.
Basically, that's part of where you got your information from.
That is correct.
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you. Now, you say, you then go on to detail the technical committee meeting of the PSJV, which raised a concern regarding the manner in which diamonds
Where
are
are
marketed.
you now, Ms. Beer?
My apologies. I am sure this time I have not left you in a different bundle. On bundle 4, on page 7.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
You may continue.
Thank you. I was reading from paragraph 25.
Okay.
And then it says, the committee advised that management request approval from the PSJV board to appoint a new service provider on a trial basis to determine whether there would be an improvement in pricing. And then you highlight those that were present at the meeting. Why?
Because those are the individuals that played key roles in the ultimate appointment of Scarlet Sky, because they triggered the process that ultimately led to Scarlet Sky being awarded the contract.
Okay. And then you say that at the time Rafiq Bahas chaired the joint board of the PSJV.
That is correct, and this information is drawn from the annual report, the Alexkor annual report.
Yes. Now, if we turn the page and move on to page 8.
I have it in front of me.
Yes. In paragraph 30, you say that SSI sent an expression of interest on 6 November 2014 on a letterhead that indicated the directors were Daniel Nathan and Kuben Moodley.
Correct.
You say this was wrong. Why?
Ms. Beer, some of the matters have been covered by your previous witness,
Yes.
isn't it? And both of them, I think their sources are the same. It's just documentation.
Chair, he talks to a different aspect of irregularity that wasn't noted in the
All
evidence
right.
of the previous
All right.
witness. Yes.
The information that the Gabota report refers to is based on the appointment date. But when I did a company search, I worked on the effective date. So while they were appointed on the date that Gabota say, the appointment date is not the same as the effective date, because they as directors, they get appointed internally in the company, but the effective date as far as the registrar is concerned was on the 4th of December, which was even later, and I think that's relevant.
But you've gone ahead of me.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Craythorne, I was asking you why you say it was wrong for SSI on the 6th of November to say that the directors were Daniel Nathan and Kuben Moodley. So we're talking about the 6th of November date.
At that date, the company that they ended up with was still sitting on a shelf. And there were standing directors, Moira, I think it's Moira.
So that's what's wrong.
That's what's wrong, yeah.
This was not true, in fact.
It's not true.
And then it says, and then we get to your point, which is that when they became shareholders on the 20th of November 2014, and then you say for later on, until the 4th of December on paragraph 31.1, until the 4th of December 2014, the date upon which Mrs. Moodley and Nathan officially became directors, SSI was a shelf company, and the day on which they became directors was 11 days after the official closing date of the 24th November 2014.
That was my point.
And the evidence of Mr. Torres was that they were directors then.
Which is incorrect.
Now, you say it's incorrect. Can I take you back to that bundle that we've put away, which is bundle 2?
Before you do so, we are at 4 o'clock. Let's talk about what's going to happen so that we are all on the same page. I'm still quite happy to continue.
Yes.
But you raised the issue of curfews and so on, of which we may have to be aware.
Yes.
What would you like me to do?
Chair, I believe we can continue until 6 if no one is objecting to that. That would allow enough time for people, including my witness who's staying at a hotel, to get there at the right time. And the chair had asked me about the possibility of continuing on another day if by 6 we are not done. Chair, the witness is available to continue on Monday.
Okay, Mr. Craythorne, you are quite happy that we continue until 6?
Yes, Chairperson.
Yes, Council. Mr. Palm?
Be fine with it.
You are fine. Okay, thank you. Let's take a 10 minutes break now, and then we'll come back and continue.
Thank
We
you.
adjourn.
All rise.
I think if we are going to continue on Monday, we might not need to go on up to 6. We might need to maybe take an hour from now, go up to 5:15 or so, because it appears that on Monday there'll be some flexibility in terms of other witnesses. There may be some, we should have enough time to finish his evidence first. So we might not need to go up to 6 o'clock, but if there wasn't much space on Monday, then we would have to use every minute that we have this evening. So I think let's go up to 5:15.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. I was referring us back to bundle 2, mining number 2. If we can turn to page 286. Okay, this is,
Is it quite hot inside here? Or is it just me?
it is,
I think
Chair.
Mr. Bum indicates it is hot. Maybe the technicians can switch on the aircon, but so they must just make sure it doesn't make too much noise. Yeah, okay, all right.
Thank you. I will adjust my voice accordingly, Chair.
I don't have a lot of hope that you will succeed.
I will
But,
try
I'm
my
willing
best.
to be proved wrong.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Let's
No.
continue in the meantime.
Thank you, Chair. Now, Mr. Craythorne, this document that appears on page 286 is a company report on Scarlet Sky Investment 60, correct?
That's correct.
Did you source this document?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I would like us to go to page 292. If you look towards the bottom, you will see where it's written in orange, company change history, correct?
Correct.
And then if you go on to the next page, 293, and you look at the third date from the top, what is contained there?
Third from the top was the Director Daniel Mark Nathan details was changed, and that was on the 4th of February.
Well, sorry, just tell us first what the third date from the top is.
4th of
4
February.
February 2016, is that correct?
That is correct, Chairperson.
Yes. And then there's a column where it's written director stroke members, secretary, trust, both director and officer, and then there is something written against that. Just repeat tell me what it is.
It says director/member/secretary/trust/both director and officer, followed by Director Daniel Mark Nathan details was changed.
Okay, thank you. Now, if you go Down, further down,
I'm sorry, what is the document? What is the nature of that document? What document is this? It's a company report.
it's a company report on Scarlet Sky.
For Scarlet Sky Investments.
Yes.
Okay, so
Sourced
it's
from
a document issued by the same company.
Yes, it's the company, it's the document issued by LexisNexis, yes.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Thank you. And then if you go further down, back on page 293, Mr. Craythorne,
Yes?
if you go further down, so you are on the third one, and you go the next one is the 4th of February, the one below that is the 12th of August 2015, the one below that is the 4th of December 2014. Can you read that one?
Again, it says director, member, secretary trust, both director and officer, and then followed by director Daniel Mark Nathan was added.
What does this mean?
This means that his appointment only became effective on the 4th of December 2014.
And then we go below that, and we see on the 4th December 2014 again.
Well, I'm sorry, now that you have asked that question, let's go back to the third date that we have dealt with regard to Mr. Daniel Mark Nathan. There it says his details were changed. Do you know what that means?
I believe that could have been in relation to a share holding change, possibly. I'm not sure.
You are not sure what it means?
I'm not sure, Chairperson.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. So if you go to the second date, that is the 4th of December 2014.
It has the same preamble, followed by Director Kuben Theron Moodley was added.
And what does that mean again?
That means that his directorship only became effective as of the 4th of December 2014.
Now, we already know that the tender closed on, they submitted their tender in November 2014. Were they directors when they submitted the tender on behalf of SSI as directors?
No, they weren't.
So should they have been appointed just on that point alone?
No, because this is a false representation. They represented themselves as being directors of a company that was bidding when it's not true.
So if we go back to that other statement in that other document where they said, in answer to the question, did they have a proven record at the time? And they said no, until Nathan joined them with his experience. So the question was, did SSI have the experience? And the response was, they didn't have a track record until Daniel Nathan joined them. Is that true? As at the time they submitted the tender, was Daniel Nathan in fact part of SSI?
His experience was of no consequence to SSI's tender.
Yes, because he was not even a director at that time. So that's another reason. That's something else that you discovered was not correct.
True.
An irregularity. This was talking to your paragraph 31.2, which is where we were on page 8 of your affidavit. So
Are
these
you
were-
asking us to move back to the other bundle?
Yes, Chair, the other bundle. Thank you.
Just announce each time you move from one bundle to another so that we can move with you.
My apologies once again, Chair, for that.
Okay, we're going back to mining bundle 4A,
Yes, Chair.
and you are at page
8.
Okay.
So basically what you say, Mr. Craythorne, in your paragraph 31.2, you say, the date on which they became directors was 11 days after the official closing date of 24 November for formal written proposals to be submitted in order to compete in the tender.
That is correct.
So if a due diligence had been conducted, which we've heard in the evidence of Mr. Torres that it was not, it would have showed these things and SSI should not have been appointed.
That is correct.
Now, from the evidence that you've given, it seems that these were things that were easy to find.
That is correct.
What does it tell you that these things were not highlighted and instead SSI went through the short list and the appointment?
It tells me that it was a foregone conclusion, a fait accompli.
And what did you make of that?
I made of that it was classic state capture.
And this was because?
This was because the modus operandi that was being followed here was a dead ringer for the other known examples of this behavior.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
This was a classic example of other state capture projects that had already been revealed in the public domain.
And then in paragraph 32, before I go to paragraph 32, you've already said that Kuben Mudli had been linked with state capture, according
Correct.
to your investigations. Okay. Now, in paragraph 32 of your affidavit, you tell us about an investigation carried out in 2015 by the Audit and Risk Committee of Alexkor as instructed by Minister Brown.
That's correct.
In paragraph 32.6, you set out an extract from the ARC report. What is the significance of this extract?
May I just take some time to read it?
Okay, maybe let me direct you correctly and not directly direct you to the extract first. In the paragraph above that, 32.5, you say that at the final selection, only 3 people sat on the panel at Alexkor's Rosebank, Johannesburg head office. Now, this is part of what was contained in the report, correct?
That's correct.
So this is not your own information. This is what you got from the report.
Correct.
And it says these were the people, Bachas, Duncan Korabi, and Dr. Roger Paul.
That is correct.
And you mentioned that Korabi awarded SSI a full 100% mark.
According to the Gamero report, that is true. I beg your pardon. I think it's in the Gaboda report that I picked this up. The fact that 100%. I'm not sure if I can't recall if I picked it up in the ARC or in the Gaboda report.
Well, you picked it up in the ARC report because you say in paragraph 32, an investigation was carried out.
Okay.
The ARC report to Brown revealed the following.
You're quite right. I beg your pardon.
Yes, the day has been long, we understand, Mr. Craythorne. Now, you say in paragraph 33 that it appears that there was a significant lack of clarity about SSI's proposal and what exactly SSI had committed to in terms of funding, pricing, beneficiation, etc., which resulted in a delay in finally awarding the tender to SSI.
That's correct. Dr. Roger Paul had raised concerns regarding the commitment to community upliftment, and the issue around the valuation and whether or not that was an appropriate way of ensuring that Alexkor would achieve the best prices. And I don't recall all of the concerns they had, but there was a flurry of emails in late December whereby Mr. Carstens was anxious to inform Scarlet Sky that they had been provisionally awarded winning the contract. There was hesitance on the part of Dr. Roger Paul, Alexkor, but ultimately Mr. Carstens was given permission to inform Daniel Nathan and Mark Chipkin, who was, I believe, who was on correspondence that I've seen, he was the Chief Operating Officer of SSI at the time that the tender was taking place. And Mr. Carstens informed them that subject to him doing a due diligence in January, they had been successful.
Now, you say in paragraph 37, in fact, in paragraph 37, you make a number of conclusions. Are these your own conclusions, or are you quoting from a document?
These are my own conclusions flowing out of information that I had gathered in my slap suit defense.
So in paragraph 37.1, tell us what you say there.
Whereas SSI's original proposal was to procure rough diamond production through an outright purchase of production at the price determined by an independent diamond valuer, SSI was permitted to change its bid proposal to the selling of rough diamonds through an auction process to the highest bidder. This favored SSI and afforded it a competitive advantage over other bidders. SSI was also permitted to include 1.5% handling fee for handling the rough diamonds.
And then in paragraph 38, you say it seems self-evident that the outcome of that process was a foregone conclusion, as you've just testified, and that the process itself was a mere sham put on by the PSJV management team, headed by the CEO Carstens, to try to create a facade of compliance with the required procurement processes. That is your own conclusion?
That is my own conclusion, yes.
And then in paragraph 40, you say, having won the tender, SSI went from being a dormant shelf company to suddenly appearing on the local diamond trading scene as the PSJV's new marketing and sales service provider, taking delivery of its first tranche of multi-million rand rough diamonds on 15 March 2015.
At its new offices located at 1 River Street, Houghton, Johannesburg, that's correct.
Yes, that's what I wanted to check. What did you want to highlight there?
What I wanted to highlight there was the fact that a considerable amount of money had been spent in anticipation of winning this tender.
So the new office was created in anticipation?
Yeah.
All right. Now you say in paragraph 42, as will be demonstrated below, the awarding of the tender to SSI and the subsequent renewal of its contract has contributed to the collapse of Alexkor, and with it, the economies of Alexander Bay and Port Nolloth and RMC.
Correct.
Is that part of the reason why you came here?
Absolutely.
Now, in the next section, you detail the links between Scarlet Sky and the Guptas. We know that some of this was not your own investigation. And you mentioned that it was part of it was dealt with in the investigation by Peter Bishop. Can you talk to these findings? Was any of what follows between paragraph 43 and 48 your own investigation, or is this based on the investigation that you refer to?
This is my own information, or but I may have drawn on documents that were provided to me, but I don't see anything here that.
You did not find yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in these paragraphs, you mention the links. Can you tell us what the links are without necessarily repeating what's in the affidavit? These are the links between SSI and the Guptas,
Yeah.
as discovered by you.
When you look at the individuals that are involved with the outcome of SSI being inserted into Alexkor's diamond value chain, they are all very well-known individuals in the public discourse around state capture.
Other than Moodley, who would you be talking about?
I've mentioned here Malusi Gigaba, Mazabenzi Zwane, Rafik Bachas, Mervyn Carstens, Cuban Moodley, Percy Causa, Kellerman, Hansi Matseka, Daniel Nathan, Selwyn Nathan, Mark Chipkin,
Yes.
and Salim Essa.
Now, tell us, you say in paragraph 48.1 that Malusi Gigaba was instrumental in the awarding of the tender. Now, we know that the tender was awarded in March 2015, and that Malusi Gigaba was no longer a minister at the Department of Public Enterprises at that time. So when you answer the question of why you say he's the first person you list as having been instrumental in making sure the award was made to SSI.
The name came first to mind because this is when the state capture project actually began, with the appointment of Malusi Gigaba and him gaining influence over the strategic future of Alexkor. So in my mind, he was involved, but I will concede that he was not directly involved, but he was certainly laying the groundwork for what was to come later. So I'll concede that it's not correct to say that he was directly involved. But he was certainly a pivotal player in the overall theme of state capture at Alexkor, running from 2010 to where we are today.
Yes, and in 2010, what happened?
He became Minister of Public Enterprises.
Now, sorry to take you back because I've taken you to paragraph 48, but I need you to go back to paragraph 44. In paragraph 44,
I'm sorry, just to make sure that the two of you are on the same page. Mr. Gigaba was appointed as Minister of Public Enterprises with effect from the 1st of November 2010. He replaced Ms. Barbara Hogan.
That's correct.
And I think he remained Minister of Public Enterprises until 2014,
Yes.
after the general election.
yes,
So if you look at the term or the period during which he was Minister of Public Enterprises, are there any decisions that he made relating to Alexkor which you associate with him having played a role in the alleged state capture, alleged capture of Alexkor?
Yes, Chairman, because Malusi Gigaba, or ex-minister Malusi Gigaba, was instrumental in repurposing the board for the purpose of taking Alexkor ultimately out of diamond mining and into coal mining, which I view to be an absolute strategic blunder of epic proportions, and was one of the issues that I tried to deal with by confronting the Portfolio Committee in Parliament over this strategic decision. And I wrote a report to Parliament trying to raise the alarm bells, but ultimately all of my efforts to draw attention to how catastrophic it would be to take Alexkor, which had just resolved the Gordian knot of the land dispute, and was all set now to recover and rebuild itself after that internecine fight, was now going to be misdirected into a misguided strategy around coal when it had absolutely no, in my view, strategic reason to want to go there. It had every reason to want to focus on the marine diamonds, because there is such an enormous future in marine mining on the west coast of South Africa, and you can see it in Namibia. Namibia has a flourishing marine mining industry. They are investing trillions in building capacity, and we sit with a moribund industry on the other side of the maritime boundary.
Now, you mentioned that you communicated with the Portfolio Committee in Parliament to try and bring this issue to their attention. Do you have copies of correspondence between yourself and the Portfolio Committee, and are they here in the bundle?
Volumes.
Okay, all right. That's important, because part of what the Commission is looking at is what was Parliament doing about some of these matters, one which may have been in the public domain, two which may have been brought specifically to their attention by members of the public. So it's important to have that evidence to say, here is a member of the public who brought these matters to the attention of Parliament. What was Parliament's response? Did they acknowledge receipt? Did they respond in substance? What did they do about it? Or were these pleas simply ignored?
They were simply ignored.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bia?
Thank you. I'm trying to decide whether to continue the vein where the chair has started, or to finish the part I was dealing with. I think I'll finish the part I was dealing with and then continue in this vein. Thank you. Mr. Craythorne, I was referring you back to paragraph 44 on page 12.
Yes.
Where you set out the group structure that was submitted with the proposal for the first tender by SSI. Now, at this time, 60% of the shares were owned by a company represented by Moodley, and 40% was owned by DNT, represented by Daniel Nathan.
Correct.
Okay. And then in paragraph 45, you tell us about the current shareholding. Now, who told you about this current shareholding?
This current shareholding I'm not 100% sure. It could have come from, I have to refresh my mind because I've drawn on so many sources. I think it could have come from the Commission's investigators or Mr. Henk Smith. I honestly, I can't remember offhand.
Okay. And it says, because I want to know whose opinion is this reflected in paragraph 45.3. Because in paragraph 45, you then set out a different shareholding reflecting 30% owned by the Richtersveld Community Trust, DNT still owning the 40%, and then in 45.3 you say 30% was owned by a black female who Daniel Nathan informed a Democratic Alliance Member of Parliament, Veronica van Dijk, when she visited the premises in December 2018, that this member, this black female is Reagan Phillips. And then you say that company searches could not confirm this.
That's correct. Miss Veronica van Dijk, her constituency is Namaqualand, so it's not her portfolio. Mining is not her portfolio, but she has great affinity for the people of Namaqualand. She's seen the devastation left behind by the terrestrial mining activities over the past 70 years. And she was introduced to me by a fellow female diamond diver. There are female diamond divers who said that Ms. van Dijk was quite passionate about the Richtersveld and Namaqualand and wanted to learn more. And that resulted in a friendship whereby she would help me try and get answers which I was unable to get through any other means by launching questions in Parliament. So there were a whole series over time of questions, and one of the things that Veronica revealed to me was because of the questions that she was asking in Parliament, she was approached by certain individuals who I haven't mentioned in my affidavit, so I won't mention it here, who were concerned about the questions that she was asking in Parliament and assured her that she was effectively barking up the wrong tree and there was no substance to what myself and others were saying in the EAC, and invited her to go and attend the auctions. I've never attended the auctions because there's no point in attending an auction without having access to data. It's pointless. So Veronica did go, Ms. van Dijk did go and attend an auction, met Mr. Daniel Nathan, and upon meeting Mr. Daniel Nathan, he informed her, according to her, that the shareholding that had been relinquished by Kuben Moodley had subsequently been taken up by two individuals, one of whom was the financial accountant of Alexkor, and the other was the company secretary, Miss Reagan Phillips. But that was that I only was told that by Veronica, and I couldn't confirm it in any way, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm taking you back to where you were explaining why you say former Minister Gigaba was instrumental in the awarding of the tender to SSI. If I may just refer you to paragraph 49 on the next page, page 13. You start saying that at the time of the appointment of SSI, Bachas was both the chairman of Alexkor and of the RMC Alexkor joint venture. And then you say he was appointed the chairman of Alexkor by Gigaba in September 2012. When Bachas was appointed, all of the directors of the board of Alexkor resigned and 6 new directors were appointed. What were you saying here?
What I was saying here was that the board had been reconstituted to fit his vision for Alexkor becoming a coal major.
When you say his vision, who is the he that you are talking about?
That is the vision which was announced by both Mr. Gigaba as well as the Deputy Minister at the time, and it was also given in his testimony in, I think, 2018 before Parliament on the Eskom inquiry. He was asked by the Minister, by the Portfolio Committee Chair lady, I think Ms. Ngangi Gobashi, about what he had done to advance emerging black miners. And he repeated that he had intended to develop emerging black miners by redirecting Alexkor out of diamonds and into coal, and into partnering with emerging black coal miners to supply coal to Eskom.
Was it not strange to take a company that is based where Alexkor was based, where it had been dealing with the mining of diamonds, and say it must now also direct its attention to coal mining in Mpumalanga?
Absolutely, but the reasoning given was the PSJV, and the fact that the PSJV had effectively sidelined Alexkor itself as a company, because Alexkor would only have oversight. So, in principle, in some respects, there was nothing wrong with Alexkor looking for an alternative revenue stream. But there was something very wrong in doing it when it wasn't budgeted or costed. So the money to support all of the activities that were taking place, all of the consultants that were being paid to pursue a coal exit strategy, was coming from the efforts of myself and my fellow diamond divers. So while we were producing very profitably for the PSJV, a lot of money, a significant amount of money was being invested in these coal mining ambitions. And you could see Alexander Bay as a town deteriorating. You could see our operations and the support of our operations deteriorating. And still the money kept on flowing. And Parliament raised the issue in 2016 when I attended the Portfolio Committee briefing. Because it had been announced already in 2013, I think, in the annual reports, that Alexkor was going to start pursuing coal mining opportunities and various other opportunities beyond the Richtersveld. And my argument was, it cannot be fair that enormous amounts of money are being expended by Alexkor pursuing projects funded by people like myself that don't have any intention of benefiting us.
Yeah, okay. Ms. Mia?
Thank you. According to your knowledge, did Alexkor in fact even have the expertise to embark on this new direction?
I don't believe so.
And the resignation of the other board members to which you refer, of the board members to which you refer in paragraph 49, I think, when Mr. Burgess was appointed, do you know the circumstances under which they resigned? Were they asked to resign? Did they decide to resign on their own in protest to something? Or what was the position? Or had their term come to an end? Is that something you know, or is that something you don't know?
Chairperson, at some point I remember tracking down Dr. V. Macon, I believe at the time that I got hold of her, she was living on the West Coast. I think she had retired. And I had a very long and cordial discussion with her, trying to find out what was going on, and I couldn't get
A straight answer.
I couldn't get a straight answer. No.
Yeah, okay. So at this stage, all you are able to say is they resigned, but what the reason was, you are not sure.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. In paragraph 50, you then link Mr. Bacchus to the board meetings of
course,
Alexkor.
Ms. Sibia,
Yes.
it may be that when they resigned, they would have finished letters of resignation, and those may be on record within the company, and maybe some of them would have stated the reasons. So that can be checked. The reasons may be relevant.
Thank you, Chair. I'm noting.
Because in other SOEs, there's been evidence of certain people being pushed out of certain positions so that others would be appointed. And then certain things happened after those appointments have happened. So it's important to check whether the reasons for the resignations may have anything to do with that.
Thank you, Chair. We will follow up on that. In paragraph 50, Mr. Craythorne, you mention that Bacchus attended the Alexkor board meetings as well as those of the joint venture, including those of the 23rd January 2015 and 29 January 2015, where the decisions to support SSI were made.
That's correct.
And then you say, after the meeting of 23 January 2015, Korabi resigned.
Correct.
This is the same Korabi that had scored 100, that had scored SSI 100.
That's correct.
Do we know why he resigned?
In the Audit and Risk Committee report that was compiled for former Minister Lynn Brown, it was recorded in that report that Mr. Korabi resigned around the time that the due diligence was not being done. And Mr. Korabi had raised quite a lot of objection to the award without a proper due diligence. And further information was revealed to me by way of Mr. Sam Sol from Amabungani, who shared the information that Alexkor had provided him in response to questions he had asked the PSJV board in response to prompts from me as a whistleblower. And in the response that he had got, and in the report, in the article that he wrote for Amabungani, I beg your pardon, he mentioned that it was a burning issue for Korabi, which is curious because he awarded him 100%, but then was extremely unhappy when they were appointed without there being a due diligence.
Thank you. You carry on to speak about Custons, and you say he was appointed as the CEO in paragraph 52 on page 14. You say he was appointed as the CEO of the joint venture in August 2012. And then you mention in the next paragraph that the Audit and Risk Committee meetings were attended inter alia by Custons, Dr. Paul, Dr. Briscoe, who were present at the meeting of the 15th of January, where the decisions to support SSI were made, and that these are the same people that attended the technical committee meetings. So you are linking again customs, as you indicated in paragraph 48, that these are the people that were instrumental in ensuring that the tender was awarded. Now you say they are Gupta associates linked to state capture. Why do you say customs is a Gupta associate linked to state capture?
Well, because Carstens compromised himself so obviously in an effort to accommodate what a Gupta-linked company was executing upon Alexkor. So his behavior is the basis upon which I link him to the Guptas. Because no rational person would have done that.
Yes, in the face of all the shortcomings with the SSI tender.
And also the vicious response and a relentless victimization that he inflicted upon myself and other contractors that tried to raise valid concerns regarding the Gupta links of this entity. He defended them viciously.
And we won't forget that he indicated there had been a due diligence.
Correct.
No evidence existed. And when in fact the company secretary said there hadn't been.
That is correct.
You move on and you deal with Khoza, Mr. Percy Khoza. You deal with him in paragraph 54. And you say he was appointed as the CEO of Alexkor, and he was a mining executive with both diamond and coal experience. And then you make you draw a conclusion that he was hired in part to pursue Alexkor's diversification into coal approved by Gigaba. Why do you say that?
Because he told me personally in a meeting in Cape Town during one of the Indabas, I forget which one it was, I forget which mining Indaba it was, but I had met Mr. Khoza, and he had told me in the presence of a former Alexkor chief executive, as well as a colleague of mine from the marine mining industry, that he had been brought on board to execute the coal strategy, but he was going to resign from Alexkor.
Okay, then you go on and you deal with Mr. Moodley, whom you've already told us. And in paragraph 57, on page 15, at the top of page 15, you say that a number of media reports have linked Moodley to the Guptas and to the erstwhile Minister of Mineral Resources, Zwane, who is infamous for his involvement in the Freedom Dairy project, which paid for the Gupta wedding.
Correct.
And you mention that you have noted that in the commission, witnesses have stated that Moodley assisted Trillion Capital to loot Eskom and assisted the Guptas in acquiring Optimum Mine.
Correct. That flows out of the Public Protector's report as well.
And then you carry on. Would you like to read the last line there?
It would appear that he has also assisted the Guptas in looting the diamond resources in the Richtersveld for their Daniel, Nathan, and other connected persons' benefit.
And then you move to Mr. Essa. Do you have personal information in relation to Essa's involvement? I note that you mentioned that much of this was discussed in Bishop's affidavit. So that's why I don't want to go into it if you...
Yes, and also S's links were also made public via, if I recall, you see, a key link in this was the integrated capital management, which had very strong links to Salim Essa, but was also had very strong links to Scarlet Sky, because Mark Chipkin was, in fact, the chief operating officer of Scarlet Sky at the time that it was punting for the tender. So the Mark Chipkin links, and the Trillion story, in my mind, positively linked Mr. Salim Essa to the SSI story.
On a lighter note, Mr. Craythorne, I wanted to say, I see that when you give an answer, you look at the evidence leader, and it's only when she doesn't look at you that you look at me.
I'm learning. I asked her to stamp her foot, but she said that would be too obvious.
Let's continue.
Thank you, Chair. I will draw no meaning from that at all. Thank you, Chair. You carry on and you mention Kellerman. That's Zarina Kellerman.
Correct.
Yes. We've heard of Kellerman in the earlier evidence of Mr. Torres.
She was the chief legal officer of Alexkor at the time that the SSI was being introduced. I did not investigate or look much into Ms. Kellerman. I know very little about what her links are, further than the fact that she was subsequently appointed as an advisor, I think, to, as I recall here, Mozabenzi Zwane. And there's also some emails where she was copied in during the period. So she was very much on board the process of bringing Scarlet Sky into Alexkor, but I'm not certain exactly what active role she was playing. So it looked to me more like, it doesn't seem to me that, I don't have any evidence of that I can say, well, she did exactly this or exactly that. But as the legal officer and with regard to her responsibilities for ensuring good governance, she could have done much more to prevent these governance oversights taking place.
You go on to mention Ms. Hansi Matseke.
It was very curious to me, as a marine miner, how Ms. Hansi Matseke could become the chairperson of Alexkor. My investigations in the public domain revealed her links to the former Premier of the Free State, Secretary General Ace Magashule, and her relationship. So there were certainly deep concerns for me when I discovered this, because it just added to the weight of the state capture theme that was developing.
And from the time frame that you give in this paragraph, that she was the chair of Alexkor from August 2015 to August 2018 to October 2018. You already testified that no, you did not. Sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you know if she was the chairperson? Well, you say, yes, I'm
Yes,
sorry, I'm
yeah.
confusing myself. You say she was also the chair of the joint venture. So if you look at the time frame of August 2015 to October 2018, she was the chair at the time that the second award was made.
That's correct. And she was also the chairperson of the Free State Development Corporation. So it was a curious mix of credentials.
And then the last institution that you mentioned is Regiment's Capital.
Well, a lot of what I've subsequently discovered about Regiment's Capital has been through interaction with the Commission. But the individuals in Regiment's Capital, in Trillion, Integrated Capital Management, it seemed like there was a constellation of satellite entities revolving around Salim S's office in Melrose Arch. Even Scarlet Sky's offices at the time that the tender was placing was right next door to Salim Essa. So in terms of connecting the...
How do you know that? Is that because you physically did go there, or how?
No, I've seen letterheads with the addresses of,
Yes.
of the various companies and
Yes.
Information in the public domain, the Budlender report,
Yes.
and various other reports. They all
Yes.
they all talk about a Melrose Arch center of gravity when it comes to state capture.
Yeah, well, it's important because, as you may know, there has been evidence in regard to ESCOM
Absolutely.
relating to Mr. Essa meeting with certain ESCOM officials at Melrose Arch in some offices there. So, but you say you base what you are saying on letterheads and information in the public domain.
Correct.
Okay.
On page 16 of the same bundle, in paragraph 62, you make a submission that the biased tender process and the involvement of the aforementioned Gupta-linked individuals are enough evidence to reasonably conclude that the insertion of SSI into the PSJV's diamond value chain was a Gupta-sponsored state capture project that followed the same modus operandi used by the Guptas in the capture of other SOEs.
That is correct.
And you carry on that there was not even a need for such a company to be appointed, for any company to be appointed in this role, in the next paragraph.
Yes, I'm going to read it and then follow it with perhaps some further explanation, if that's in order.
Yes, that's fine.
Paragraph 63 reads as follows: Indeed, there was absolutely no need for any marketing or sales company to promote the diamonds recovered by PSJV. Given the expert opinion of Charles Wyndham regarding the self-selling quality of Alexkor's diamonds and the example set by Zimbabwe state-owned diamond company who sell their own productions in Zimbabwe, I submit that if international buyers will travel to Zimbabwe to buy Marangi diamonds, they will certainly also travel to Alexander Bay to buy Alexander Bay's diamonds, Alexkor's diamonds. So Charles Wyndham is an internationally acclaimed expert on polished and rough diamonds. His company for many years was the government diamond valuator for the Canadian diamond industry. He was brought into contact with Alexkor around 1998 by the the chairperson at the time, who was Advocate Nona Goza, because Advocate Goza had deep concerns already then about what was taking place. And she went and visited mines in Russia and did extensive research on the diamond pipeline, is what we call it in the industry. And as part of that process, Mr. Charles Wyndham submitted a report in 1998 to Alexkor, making it very clear to Alexkor that by tying themselves into an exclusive agreement with De Beers, at the time it was De Beers, it was costing at least 23% of what could have been achieved through a process of proper price discovery. And the report that Mr. Wyndham authored, even he as an expert based in London, knew that there is no better address in terms of diamond geology than the address that Alexander Bay has. It's got what in the mining industry they talk about a phenomenon called closiology. So you have scientific geology, but then you have closiology. So if you're mining diamonds hand over fist like they are in Namibia, you should be able to be mining diamonds hand over fist across an imaginary line in South Africa. It's the same deposit. So that's what closiology means. And that's a point that already in 1998, someone as far removed from Alexander Bay as Mr. Charles Wyndham was making. So regarding the quality of Alexkor's diamonds, he made it very clear that Alexkor doesn't need any marketing. The diamonds are so world-renowned. People will come and buy them in Alexander Bay. This whole story of marketing this and marketing that, it's all nonsense. It all opens up opportunity for state capture and for ravaging the value chain and the diamond pipeline.
Thank you very much. Chair, this is the end of this line of questioning, so I'm looking at the time as agreed.
Yes. Well, we can stop now, or we could go on for another 15 minutes, stop at 5:30. If that's fine with everybody, I think it will be fine with everybody. Maybe let's do that.
Thank you,
Just take
Chair.
the next 15 minutes, then stop at 5:30.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
The next section of your affidavit, Mr. Craythorne, you deal with how there was also a breach of statutory provisions. We are still on page 16. You deal with the provisions of the Diamonds Act.
That's correct. By law, you're not allowed to conduct licensed activities under the license of someone else. So the activities of Scarlet Sky, which were conducted on the strength of a license held by Daniel Nathan Trading, is not permitted. It's unlawful.
So in addition to the other irregularities in relation to their appointment, this was in fact unlawful for SSI to then, having been appointed, do what it was appointed to do.
That is correct.
And then you explain in paragraph 70, on page 17, paragraph 70, that there's even a prohibition on the utilization of unregistered premises as a trading house.
I'm not sure what the situation is now, but at the time, the premises that Scarlet Sky was conducting the auctions was not registered as a tender, what they call a tender house. So the premises themselves have to be licensed, as does the entity that is managing and conducting and directing those activities on those premises.
And then you take us back to that question that we've already dealt with in Parliament, and you draw a conclusion on page 18, at the top of page 18, paragraph 73.1, and you say, although Daniel Nathan is a holder of a diamond dealer license and a diamond trading house license, these licenses were issued in the name of DNT and not SSI. What is the significance there?
The significance of that is that it is irrelevant that he has a license. It is a requirement that the entity that is conducting the business and the premises upon which they are conducted, that entity has to have the license. It has to be in that entity's name. It cannot, it's like the driver's license, as Mr. Torres said. You cannot drive a car on someone else's license.
Okay. Now we move to a different section of your affidavit, and we deal on page 19 with the complaints leveled by the mining contractors. You start out by saying that the value has considerably diminished. You've already told us how you calculated the value by producing your own indices and doing comparisons. Now, you're telling us that in October 2017, you wrote to the company secretary of the JV on behalf of the EAC's members, and who had expressed their concern and anger about the ever-decreasing values attributed to the diamonds produced by them. Now, was this after or before you posted the pricing on the outside of the mine, the plant?
This was around the same time. I can't be certain whether it was before or after.
What was the gist of what you wrote to Ms. Reagan, Ms. Phillips?
The gist was effectively that there was no, first of all, there was a huge amount of discontent regarding the price performance. But there was also a lot of consternation about the lack of information about who these people were and you know, what was the reason for this dramatic drop. So the purpose of my letter to Ms. Phillips was to say, look, everybody is very unhappy about the situation. Can we get together as the EAC representing the contractors and yourselves, and can you start making some disclosures so that we can at least understand who it is that is behind this poor performance and how it is that they came to be where they are. And I also raised the concerns around the disappearance of our tailings, which was also a burning issue. I raised also concerns about the lack of disclosure in the annual reports, because it's vital for us, and in fact any user of an integrated report, to have segment information. You need to understand if there is cross-subsidization of business units, which are the business units that are performing well and which are the business units that are not. And if you don't have segment reporting, you have no way of understanding why it is that when you have a segment that you are a part of that is performing very well, it is that the overall enterprise is going downhill.
Now, you pointed out a number of things. What was the response that you received? Because to me, these sound like serious issues. So what response did you receive?
Can I read the response? Dear Gavin, your email 09 incident is noted. Any issue pertaining to the diamond sales and diamond pricing trends must be addressed directly with the PSJV. SSI is the marketing agent of the PSJV duly appointed by the board. We cannot provide information of a service provider to third parties. You're welcome to discuss any issues with SSI or any other service provider of the PSJV with management. Regards, Reagan Phillips.
Yeah. And after this, you wrote another email, which is then when you went into greater detail, as you've just explained.
That's correct. Actually, it was the second letter that I went into the type of detail about what sort of transparency it is the contractors were seeking in order to gain some kind of understanding as to why their businesses were suffering as a result of such poor pricing performance. And I note in my affidavit that I received no response to that email.
Instead, what happened after that email? In paragraph 85.
After I raised serious concerns regarding the sharp decline in the prices of our diamonds, my and several other miners' contracts were cancelled.
So, in the timeline, how soon after these emails were your contracts cancelled?
Well, before the contracts were cancelled, they were actually cancelled by way of non-renewal. So we had been contractors with Alexkor for many, many years, and the contracts would get renewed every 3 years or so. And what happened in our instance is the whistleblowers from the ESC did not have their contracts renewed, but in my case, because they felt that my behavior was particularly egregious to them, they actually blocked me personally. So before they cancelled my company's contract, they knocked me out as the key person involved in running the business and blocked my access into the mine. So that began what was to be the start of the decimation of my financial well-being, because that resulted in 16 months of shutdown without vessel insurance, which to this day I can't pay the insurance on my vessel. This year I nearly lost my vessel twice. Just before I came to the commission, I struggled in a big storm, 35 knot wind where the moorings broke, and I had to go into the mine on myself and swim out to my vessel to save that vessel. If that vessel had gone on the rocks, that's the only thing my wife and my family have left. And we can't insure it because they're stealing our diamonds in the plant. So it's been a tough journey to get here, Chairperson.
Yes.
Mr. Craythorne, you say it was yours and several other miners' contracts that were cancelled. Were they also people that had been vocal against certain things at the PSJV?
Yes, but not very vocal. Look, over the 4 years from the time that I first blew the whistle in Parliament in November 2016, it wasn't as if we came out guns blazing. It started off with friendly requests to. I wrote to the Alexkor board and I said, look, there are things that are going on in Alexander Bay which have serious implications for you as the 51% owner in this PSJV. And with regard to your assets, your very valuable diamond assets that you need to know about. And I gave an undertaking, I corresponded with Zukisa Ranto, who was then the chairperson of the portfolio committee. She was very interested. And we found out in a subsequent meeting that we had, my colleague George and I, that her son had been threatened in a street coming out of school. Okay? She told me and George that she had tried time and time again to arrange an oversight a visit to Alexander Bay, and every time she tried to arrange it, the answer was no, because it was too dangerous and the members of the portfolio committee's safety could not be guaranteed. The same allegations were made on record. It's in the Hansard by Honourable Cathy Labuskaghni, where she stated in a portfolio committee that she was told to stay away from Alexkor. And we need to find out who it is that was intimidating Zukisa Ranto and Cathy Labuskaghni and going out of their way to make sure that Alexkor or the portfolio committee could not do oversight of what was going on in Alexkor.
What reasons were you given for the cancellation of your contract?
The breakdown of the trust relationship.
What were you told was the factual basis for the conclusion that there was a breakdown in the trust relationship, if this was clarified to you at all?
There wasn't much detail given.
Did you ask them to tell you what they were talking about?
Well, one colleague in particular wrote to Ms. Phillips. I could understand why they're upset with me, because I was going to the press, I was going to the media, but that had only come very late in the day. So there had been a build-up of tension. So what became apparent to me, Chairperson, as a member of the public, that is, if you want to get people's attention, you have to put yourself in harm's way. They don't take you seriously. I had to put myself in harm's way and end up getting slap-suited by Weber Wenzel and top advocates. And then again getting another slap-suit again. That destroyed my business, it destroyed my sense of well-being. It's had an immense impact. But that's the kind of thing that you have to do before people actually start thinking, well, look, why is this guy so crazy? Is he a lunatic, or does he really have something that he has to be angry about or upset about?
And of course, sometimes what happens is that harm is visited upon you so as to deter others from following in your footsteps.
And that is why there's so much fear amongst that's why we don't have a support base. We don't have a power base, because when Mr. Wayne Cook, when my access into the mine was cancelled, Wayne simply wrote a letter to Radian Phillips saying, look, this is a bit heavy. And she reacted very, very harshly to him, and that resulted in him having his contract cancelled. And that when he asked for an explanation, they said to him, because you, Mr. Wayne Cook, are supporting Mr. Gavin Craythorne.
What do you think they would say in defending their decision to cancel your contract? What do you think they would put on the table? Do you think they would have nothing factually other than to really talk about what indeed happened, namely you were raising issues that they were uncomfortable with? Or do you think they would come up with some...
Chairperson, when I first rang the bell in late November 2016, my concerns were not about the Guptas. the Gupta emails had not surfaced yet. The whole state capture story had not really dawned on us as a country of what was going on. I was more concerned with white monopoly capital, state capture, because I had read Sam Peter Blanche's book, Lost in Transformation, and that woke me up to what apartheid was all about, to what, it's just, you have the insiders and you have the outsiders. So if you're on the outside, it's tough. And sometimes you can get on the inside, but then you've got to play the same game. So the only indication that I got was when I tried to point out to the Alexkor board, who I met in Parliament, listen, the issues that you need to start paying attention to. I told them that I believed that the PSJV had been captured by TransX. Okay, the entire PSJV top management is all TransX executives. And they're also part of, okay, let me not go there for now, Chairman. But it was very clear to me what was going on. And I tried to warn the Alexkor board that the narrative that there was no future diamond mining potential for Alexkor was a horrendous lie. And I, in fact, authored a report discussing the local geology, the historical production, and why it was so important to start focusing on the marine. And I initially got a very warm response from Zukiswa Ntlangula, who was a board member of Alexkor at the time. And when I met her in Parliament, I had a very good discussion with her, and I said to her, look, I'll put together a report for you, okay, but I need your support. All that happened was that she referred what I was saying to Mr. Carstens, and that resulted in a month later, just before the mine closed, I got called in to meet and face Mervyn Carstens and Ms. Reagan Phillips, who were livid with what I'd done, and they said, listen, I'm going to lose my contract. And I said straight to them, I said, listen, you've betrayed us, in terms of, the Scarlet Sky issue and, this Quesco plan which had emerged and so on.
Yeah, okay, all right. We've gone past 5:30. I think we must stop here, unless there is a question which you think shouldn't wait until Monday.
I have one question, but I cannot guarantee how long Mr. Craythorne will take in answering. So
Okay.
we can stop here.
Let it wait.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, we are going to stop at this time. Thank you to everybody for cooperation for us to work until now. We will continue on Monday then at 10 o'clock. And we'll deal with other issues connected with Monday, in terms of other witnesses. So we are going to adjourn. We adjourn.